Welcome to the March 5th, 2018 Troy City Council meeting. We are pleased this evening to have Councilman Baker lead us with the invocation. If you would please rise for that, and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
We give you thanks, Heavenly Father, for all the blessings you've provided each and every one of us in the city of Troy and throughout the state, country, and world. We ask that you continue to bless us by guiding us, helping us make tough decisions, helping us be good people. We need good people in this society. Lord, we ask that you guide us tonight at the council table to make good decisions on behalf of the city of Troy, to represent the people, to listen to their concerns, to provide feedback, and to ultimately make policy that is good for everyone in this city. Lord, please be with those tonight who are struggling and suffering and may not have the strength to ask for your help themselves, knowing that they need extra guidance and support. Please be with all of the children of our community, as they are our most precious resource, and we care for their safety, and we always want them to do well. We're so thankful for all you've given us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Baker. Troy City Council meeting is now called to order. The roll call, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Slater?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham? Here. Councilmember Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Henderson?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick? Councilmember Pennington?
Here. I did receive correspondence from Councilwoman Hoderick that she would be out of the county this evening, so I will move that the Troy City Council hereby excuses the absence of Councilwoman Hoderick at the regular City Council meeting of March 5th, 2018, due to being out of the county. Support. Moved by the chair and supported by Councilman Henderson that we excuse the absence of Councilwoman Hoderick at the regular City Council meeting of March 5th, 2018, due to being out of the county. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Motion passes. First on the agenda are certificates of recognition and special presentations. I see so many smiling faces from Athens High School here this evening. C1 is a proclamation in recognition of the Athens High School 2017-18 Student Council. I would ask them if they would meet me at the podium along with their advisors so that I could present the proclamation. Let's see, we've got too many on this side, not enough on this side. Do we have the president of the...
Hello.
Wow, hello, come here. What's your name?
Lauren.
Lauren?
Yes. Hi.
Hi. What's your last name?
Hanush.
Do you mind if you stand here with me while I read this proclamation?
I wouldn't mind at all.
I'm honored to be here to present this proclamation in recognition of Athens High School 2017-2018 Student Council. Welcome to Troy.
Thank you.
I'd like to read this proclamation in the record because it says so much about what you've done for our community and how thankful we are for what you've done.
Thank you.
So whereas the Athens High School Student Council is very active and a dedicated group of 54 students and 2 advisors committed to giving back to their community as well as the region. And whereas each year the Athens High School Student Council puts in countless hours as well as blood, sweat, and tears to help raise money for charity of their choice during Charity Week. And whereas the Athens High School Student Council selected Detroit Street Care, a nonprofit organization that provides health care to the homeless in Detroit through the Michigan State College of Osteopathic Medicine. What a great thing you've done for the city of Detroit. And whereas this year the Athens High Student Council gave back in a way that many teens and even most adults could not do by organizing a full week of activities, including Carnival Night, Jail and Bail. Did you do that?
Yeah, we did that.
You did that?
Yeah, we did that.
Okay. Teacher Dance Battle. Did you do that? Oh. Pancake Breakfast, Penny Wars, Film Festival, Parent Cook-Off, Restaurant Nights, Volleyball Tournament, Mr. Athens Pageant, really? T-shirt sales, dance, prep rally, euchre tournament for parents, and an Athens Got Talent show. And whereas Athens High School Student Council raised $148,813.77 this year for Detroit Street Care. Let's applaud that. They raised a record $155,416.35 last year for the Jenna Cass Believe in Miracles Foundation. They also raised more than $84,100 in 2016 for the Joan Rose Foundation, $57,000 in 2015 for Wish Upon a Teen, $56,000 in 2014 for Desert Angels, more than $40,018 in 2013 for Angels of Hope, more than $35,000 in 2012 for I've Got Your Back, and $34,000 in 2011 for Believe in Miracles. And whereas the Student Council generates excitement throughout the school's 1,600 students as well as within the community. City Council and council meetings that they take place prior to school, you don't do City Council, but you do your own council, right?
Yeah.
Right. And after a full day of classes, members stay after school to count pennies, sell shirts, run the events, and then go home to complete their homework. This is not a lot of sleep for students on council during charity week, right?
Yeah, not a lot of sleep at all.
No. So whereas students find out how much money they raised at a Friday prep rally assembly and then celebrate their accomplishments with a final fundraiser dance that evening. So now, therefore be it resolved that Detroit City Council extends special recognition to the Athens High School Student Council for their selfless and tireless service and dedication to so many worthwhile organizations over the years. And be it further resolved that Detroit City Council and all of Troy residents congratulate the Athens High School Student Council for being a shining example of how to give back to your community as well as the region. And of course, we wish all of the Athens High School students continued success in their future endeavors. It's presented this 5th day of March 2018. It's signed by myself, all members of City Council. We can't thank you enough for what you've done for our community. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like just to say a quick thank you for the recognition. I appreciate, and we all appreciate, the support for all these years. This event would not be possible without the community rallying behind us, and we always look forward to getting our businesses involved and different parents involved, even the Colts, if they're willing to get them involved. So we appreciate it and look forward to raising money for great causes in years ahead. So thank you.
Anybody else want to talk?
All right, you got me. All right, I'm Sean Dufresne, and on behalf of my co-advisor, Dina Chrysopoulos, we'd like to thank you for this honor. And as Lauren said, this has become a community event. We have a lot of support from our administration and staff and families, and it's just such a wonderful cause from year to year. And so we can't thank you enough, and we got great kids and just great families, wonderful community. And Dina?
Anybody else want to talk? All set?
Good.
Scared of the dark.
Thank everybody.
No offense to City Manager Kishnick, but I think that'll be the highlight of the night. That's a tough act to follow. Could somebody open the doors in the back? We have to have those open. Thank you. Next is C2, a Civic Center Conversation Summary presented by City Manager Brian Kishnick.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. I'd like to begin by donating $100 to next year's cause, and hopefully that would help me through this presentation, get a little more exciting. But anyway,
Hold you to that.
that's right. Civic Center Conversations, and what you have before you is the original timeline that this project dates back to at a retreat in 2016. Up through the town center talks and the 2 public engagement sessions we had most recently, and this will talk about the results. But just the history is, on August 7th, 2017, the City Council asked us to suspend the RFQ process looking for a master developer and all town center development activity. And then at the November 13th meeting, the City Council scheduled a study session to further discuss this and determine what to do. And then on December 5th, the City Council instructed staff to conduct 2 public engagement sessions to continue the discussion, continue the education, and we did some other things as well that I'll talk about in a second. So, at the January 13th meeting, we were at the Troy Public Library. It was a Saturday in the afternoon, so we tried to do one in the afternoon on a weekend and then one at night on a weekday. So we had presentations by Bob Gibbs and Matt Farrell. There were about 60 residents in attendance, some Planning Commission members, council members, and we asked for, on sticky notes, likes, dislikes, unanswered questions, new ideas, and then I added one at the last second because it always comes up, is how to communicate, how should we reach the residents and how can they reach us? So we added that as a board starting at the library. Then we went to the community center and we had the same presentation. But we added from the previous conversation and many others, I think, and then your emails and phones probably, a vacant building presentation. And that is to show we don't own the old Kmart headquarters. We just can't go developing on there. And many other properties throughout the city we demonstrated. The attendance is much greater at 174 people, planning commission, city council members. And we asked the same questions on sticky notes for likes, dislikes. And then we put it all together, gave the raw data to the city council in a report as we were putting the rest of it together based on themes. So we want to go over these themes to give just a brief example of what we saw when we went through the raw data. But I want to stop and say that all this information is on troymi.gov, and this presentation will be up there. Anything we have related to this topic, we want to have it on the website so anybody has access to it. The likes, this is what we found. Some people liked that it was future forward thinking. Walkable space, gets youth and millennials to stay. Good start, but needs to improve the concept. They like the lake, and then utilizing the current open space. And then the dislike, they didn't want Huber Park to change, and they didn't feel there was a need for another hotel. Concerned about traffic congestion and too dense of a project. They didn't want the amenities relocated, and there was a lot of conversation to put effort and resources in the library and aquatic center. There were concerns about housing and what it would cost and would it be affordable, was it for seniors, millennials, and then parking concerns, not enough for this development. And then the other thing that I didn't put on there that just came to my mind today was the green space issue and utilizing green space, and we can talk about that later in the green space initiative that's taken off as a result. So the unanswered questions, to the best of our knowledge, that as themes, another hotel. Why do we need another hotel? One answer is, and this doesn't mean it's the right answer. These are just answers. That there could be there's talk about a 5-star hotel, and there isn't one in Oakland County, and it could be on this particular development site. Traffic, would it be considered? How are you going to determine if the traffic it works? Obviously, a traffic study would have to be conducted just like any other development in the city of Troy. Increase in police and fire, we don't anticipate that, but we never do, but we continually look at that every year. Why hasn't this happened sooner? To have walkability, newer public facilities, a new library. One answer is we've been talking about this for years. What kind of retail will be inhabiting the space? And we really don't know unless and until a master developer is brought on board. So then who will pay for this? Again, that's unknown until we have a master developer. What happens to the taxes in Troy? Don't know that, don't know the value of the development, don't know the tax generation. How long will the project take? Again, if there were a master developer identified and willing to come in on this project with the city, we'd have to put that timeline together. Seniors and millennials, as the current concept was presented, there could be housing walkability for all generations, not just seniors and millennials. And a very common question or comment was, will this come to a vote? And clearly that would be at the city council's discretion of whether or not to put it for a vote. So going back to number one, who will pay for this? I know the mayor has been very vigilant in saying this will need to be cost neutral if this project's going to go forward. And I know council members have echoed that as well. So we asked for new ideas, and we hear this during the master plan and many other housing developments. Create a space that is senior housing focused. They like the Performing Arts Center. Get input from youth on this project. and I'm sad to see a lot of the youth left, but there was a large group, oh, well, that's why, because there was a large group from Troy High, right, that came, and we're very, very participatory. Had a lot of good thoughts and thought we should come into the school maybe. And then can't you just update the current city amenities with this money, like the library, aquatic center, and city hall that all need repair? So then we ask ways to how we could communicate better with the residents. The issue comes up a lot that how did we reach out to tell people about the meeting? How will we continue to reach out? And so there are all the ways that were listed, which are many of the ways we use to reach people. So if you have any ideas before you all leave, please just write a note to me and say, how can we reach? We're always trying to reach people in the community. So with that, we come to options as far as staff could determine. And the first is to place the project on hold to conduct further public engagement opportunities, conduct concept charrettes with the public to get input on alternative layouts. That was discussed, you remember, at the community center where we'd have 10 tables of 6 and they all did their own design and presented and went on from there. We could pursue the requests for qualifications and determine if a master developer is even interested at this point. And if so, look at the project, refine it, and communicate with the public. If not, abandon the project or come up with some other idea. We could schedule a study session to further discuss this project. We could discuss the mechanics of a vote to the people on this project, which continually comes up, as I said. We could re-examine the existing plans and determine future direction throughout the conversation. As you know, there have been several plans over the years that are also online that you can look at. So you could re-examine all those plans, or we can do nothing. And those are the options that we were able to brainstorm and think of. I'm sure there are many others, but that's what we have for a presentation for the City Council. Now, the raw data, remember, was provided in reports, and so it's online. You can go through that as well and test our ability to theme eyes, if that's a word. And I turn it back to you, Mayor, for conversation.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions for City Manager Kishnick from council at this point? That means you did a good job.
Thank you. I think it's been a long process that everyone's been intimately involved in.
That's for sure.
On council.
That's for sure. Does anyone wish to speak on this item this evening from council? Councilman Hamilton.
If I recall from the study session, I think there was a general consensus with council that whatever we do come up with will be put to the vote of the people for an approval vote. Do we still have that consensus, would you say, or you don't have to speak on it, but I'm still committing to putting whatever final project we have to the vote of the people. I think it's important for people to hear that, so know that if we do proceed at all with this, that ultimately the people will decide if we move on this. I think it's important to clarify that. Does anyone else want to make that commitment or give me your thoughts on that, that whatever we do end up coming up with will go to a vote?
Sure. I think that's probably a good starting point. I think I've been trying to be pretty consistent with that myself. I think this is a very important decision to the city of Troy, and although we've been elected to represent the community, I strongly feel that it is such an important idea. It's so important to the community that they should have a voice. But I think we have to decide how that happens.
Right.
But I support that myself. Councilman Baker.
Well, I will echo that. I agree. I've said before that any project on this property would be transformative for our city to a certain extent. So I believe that definitely it should go to a vote. The question we come up with is, what question do we put to a vote? And I'm not sure, based on those options, that we're even at that point. One of them is do nothing. So that could be that could be an option as well. So I'm not sure where we'll fall out on that, but I mean, I certainly commit to any redevelopment project of the Civic Center that even touches the scope of something we've looked at would need to go to a vote of the people. Whether or not we need to go to a vote of the people if we're going to invest some money to add some trails or something, I think that's a differentiation. But a major development project, absolutely at this point.
Councilman Henderson.
First off, thanks for the amount of work that goes into those meetings, and to condense 1 million sticky notes into 6 categories is a remarkable accomplishment. And I also agree that, you know, we should, it's clear after what we had to go through in November that the people want to have a say in this. And again, the complexity of this is, you know, what kind of a question do you pose, you know, to the people? And, you know, what does that look like? Is it 3 questions of 1 question? Is the question to include facts, figures, and numbers? And that's where we all struggle. And so that we're going to have to, I don't know if it requires a study session or what we have to do to try to come to a head with that, but yeah, we still have work to do to be able to frame that question or questions.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. I would also support it going to the vote of the people. What we actually vote on is, certainly it's very premature to suppose what that could be, or if there's even anything to vote on. The voice of the people is always important, and I think even before we get to anything that could appear on the ballot this year, next year, in 3 years, who knows, you know, one thing that was very striking, and I think all of us council members remarked on it at one point, which was each time we go to these informational sessions, public engagement opportunities, there's a lot more newer faces, which is a little bit surprising because it's a project that's been in discussion for about a year or so. But there are some key demographics that we are missing. A lot of the younger families, millennials, and I think, you know, before we go to a vote of the people, we really need to get what the voice of that demographic truly is. Otherwise, I think we could potentially go off course or maybe not have the best solution for the community going forward. So I don't know, you know, as Councilman Henderson said, maybe this is a study session, I'm not sure, but I'm concerned that we're not necessarily getting a good slice of the community's thoughts and opinions on it. I know we've got a few key demographics that have been very vocal and very much in attendance at these public engagement sessions, but I think we're missing out on some key information.
Councilman Pennington.
Well, it's interesting to me that one of the ideas from one of the groups that met was, can we update the current city amenities with this money? Well, what money? That's the key. You know, we're not looking to spend any of the city's money. That's one of the things we've always talked about, is this being cost neutral. So, like City Manager Kishnick said, so that is one of the keys that the public needs to know. And I agree, we've lost a lot of momentum, but it's something that we really have to do this year, and get out there and get it to the, if we're going to have a vote of the people, it's got to be in this November, because otherwise, you know, we don't have to, you know, option number 7 is do nothing. We obviously don't have to take that to a vote of the people to do nothing. I mean, it's pretty simple. But we need to continue moving forward and, you know, continue with community engagement. And if we're going to do something, even if it's a scaled-down project, we need to get on it.
Thank you. Any other comments, Councilman Henderson?
Just to key off of something that Councilman Pennington said, cost neutral, people are going to probably comment on that. Just, it's going to take some money for infrastructure initially to kickstart it, roads, drains, that kind of thing. So yeah, there will be a cash infusion, but our plan, and we've all talked about this, is at the end of the project, it's going to be cost neutral or even cash flowing. So that's the distinction there. And you know, some of the other plans that that we've talked about, making this area or this campus a central park, making an ice rink, or some of the other plans that have been kicked around over the last decade are going to physically cost the city money. So because we're not going to have developers that are going to come in here and say, here, we're going to help you with this. That's on us. If we're going to make a central park out of it, that's on us, and we have to know if the city has the chops for that or not. And anything other than that, we expect that the developers would contribute and/or pay for the entire thing at the end of the day. So that's the distinctions that we have to try to ferret through.
All good points. Any other, see if we can maybe try to wrap this up and see if we can move forward. I think it's pretty obvious to me, and I think it should be obvious to the city administration, that we need to move towards something that we can present to the public for a vote. Quite frankly, I don't think any more community events are going to help in that process. I think I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Abraham that we're not getting a fair representation of the total community by having these public engagements. Not to say that they haven't been good, but we're not getting a good representation I agree with that. So I think we have to either find a way to do a better job of that, or we have to make a decision as to how we're going to determine what that is to get a question out there. Now, whether that's through an RFQ, if we put an RFQ out there and nobody comes forward, that's the end of the project, in my opinion, okay? So until we know if there's even anybody out there that has any interest today, I know there was interest a year ago, but I'm not so sure there's interest anymore. So I think we have to think, is there even anybody out there that's interested? If there's nobody interested, then to me, it's a done deal. And to do nothing, I think, is irresponsible for council. I think we've heard enough from both sides that we need to do something. The buildings are getting old. We need to do something. So to do nothing, I think, is irresponsible. When I was doing my research over the weekend for a number of things that are coming up tonight, I came across the survey that was done in 2012. And I don't know how many members of council are even aware that there was a survey done in 2012. I'm not so sure that we shouldn't do another one of those. It's been 5 years, going on 6 years. So just something maybe you should think about. Maybe we should do that. Maybe it's time to do that again. Because things have changed since 2012. A lot has changed since 2012. And for me, it would be very interesting to know how the community is thinking today. Because I was taking a look at the way they were thinking in 2012, and the most important thing to the community in 2012 was the library, believe it or not. So things have changed. And I'm not so sure that maybe we shouldn't do that again. And maybe it would give us a good sense of how the community feels about issues and how the community feels about whether we should move forward with a project like this. I think we can find an organization that can do that for us. And quite frankly, I think I'd like to think about that. But I don't think that we should just do this at the table here. I think we should have a study session. I think we owe it to Councilwoman Hoderick to be part of that discussion. And I know we have the budget coming up. We have a lot of budget issues coming up, and we have study sessions. I think we're booked for a while, but I really don't see how this council can move forward at this point without having a clear discussion. And whether you agree with me or not about a survey, maybe you could just think about that until we can get together and talk about it further. But if you're interested in looking at the 2012 survey, I have a copy of it, and I'd be more than happy to share with you, or I think staff probably has a copy of that too. If I could, just one more thing. I see Mr. Arkins here this evening, who I have a lot of respect for, sent us an email, I think, a couple days ago, with some suggestions which I thought were worth listening to. And I think there's other suggestions that are out there that are worth listening to. But at the end of the day, I just think I want everyone to understand that I think this council is committed to doing everything we can to listen to the residents, getting feedback from the residents, whether that's a survey or whatever. And then we all agree, I think we need to do something with this site. And if we agree that we need to do something with this site, we need to get that to the public and let them have a voice on it. And that's just my 2 cents. So, Councilman Pennington.
I agree with almost everything what you said. My point being is that it's just the sense of urgency may not be there with some of my fellow council members. I just think that it's been an ongoing process. The election was 4 months ago. We have 6 months worth of meetings before we have another election, basically. And so I'd just like to move this forward as quickly as possible. I mean, you know,
well,
it's not something we
I
can
guess
do
we could
tomorrow.
ask City Manager Kishnick to look at some available dates. I'm more than happy to, you know, if you do want to do a survey, though, you're talking about a little bit of time here. That's all. But
Yeah, just if you're saying, let's go forward, we can do it on March 19th. There's real, a liquor, what time, is that 6 o'clock? So, you know, March 19th with the liquor violation hearings, then it's probably out, unless you want to do it at 5 o'clock. Yeah, that doesn't work for a lot of people.
Yeah, but John?
April has the 2 budget sessions, but we could find, you know, those are a non-council meeting night, so we could find a council meeting night to do it in April. And then May is pretty wide open as well. So, I mean, given 7 people's schedule, we could fit it in, but.
When I was talking about the survey, I saw a lot of maybe some nods or some, you know, we could ask council to, or ask city administration to explore that if you want and see if that's an option for, you know, come back to us in a couple of weeks and see if there's an option at looking at that. It was very interesting to read the survey, and I personally would like to see what the public has to say in 5 years from Mayor Pro Tem Abraham.
Just a point of clarification. I know the survey in 2012, and I do remember that. It would be interesting to revisit that. And in that, if I recall, had a pretty wide breadth of concerns or topics. The survey that you're suggesting to go out this year, is it that same breadth of topics, or is it specific to the Civic Center possibilities?
We could do it either way, but that survey did get specific on a couple of items, but it did have a range of other items that I thought was interesting that we may still want to do, but it did ask specific questions also. So you could do both. It's a possibility. But Councilman Henderson.
Yeah, I like the idea of if we've got a lot of stuff out there, let's clean it all up in one mailing rather than several mailings. But I have just a question, and maybe you can answer this, Aileen, or maybe you can't. What's the drop dead date for having a November ballot question?
For November, the filing deadline is July 31st.
Okay. So we would have to have language put together.
That's the date that I would have to submit the language that's approved by council to the county for placement on the ballot.
Okay.
4 months away. That's what I'm saying.
You said the 19th had one liquor hearings before council?
Right.
You know, we used to have study sessions after council. I'm not opposed to that if we don't have a large agenda either, so just saying. Councilman Hamilton.
Yeah, I just want to say I liked everything you said there. I like the idea of a survey, and I think I agree with your ideas for that. So.
You think it would be possible at the next council meeting to have a report on whether, take a look at a survey? Possible?
These cost and time.
Cost and time?
Sure.
I think I know what the cost was, but I don't want to publicly say it at this point. I'm not sure for sure.
Yeah, okay. But I do have a question.
You want to pencil in a study session date?
Sounds good to me.
At that night after the council meeting?
On the 19th?
The 19th, okay.
Probably not. If we're going to get a report on a survey, and let's say the survey takes 3 weeks,
Maybe the following Monday?
with council's permission, maybe, let's see what the report says next week, and then we can make a firm decision after that.
All right.
But can we, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Councilman Baker.
Can we at least, agree in theory that we'd be open to before one of the April meetings, even though, because the budget study sessions are on a different night, right?
Right.
I think there is some urgency, and we're waiting for the report, but we should at least be prepared for one of the dates in April.
Yes.
Okay, making sure.
Councilman Henderson.
I would think we want to do the drawing a blank, the mailing.
Survey?
The survey, thank you. The survey before we do the study session,
Well,
because of
that's
the
the thing.
time is of the essence with the survey if we're going to use it for anything regarding the July 31st deadline for a ballot question, so.
Agree, but I don't, until we see what a possible report and cost would be, I don't know that we could
Make the decision.
make a decision. So wait for that.
So we could try to have the report on March 19th on a regular item, and then see how you want to proceed from there. And that would be fairly quick to at least get enough knowledge on a survey for you all to figure out how to go forward.
Sounds good.
So a lot of nods there.
Just one more question.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham.
And just to clarify, going for a vote of the people, whether it's this November or whenever, it is an advisory vote, correct, City Attorney Bloom?
Yes, if it is just asking whether or not you should do this. It is advisory. However, it may be possible if there are some financing or bonds or anything like that, that it would be a binding issue. Okay. So the answer is maybe.
Lawyers.
Any other comments by Councilman Hamilton?
I think we've made it clear that even if it is just advisory, we'll follow what the people want when it comes to this. If they say no, we'll say no too. That's my comment.
I think it's been clear that we want to hear what the public has to say. Okay, thank you. There are no carryover items this evening or public hearings, so we will move to public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses, and I will call on Christy Blowles, Troy resident who wishes to speak on N1. Good evening.
It's Bowles.
What did I say?
Close.
I try my best.
Hi, I'm Christy Bowles. I've been a Troy resident for a little more than 20 years, and I emailed all of you probably about 2 weeks ago just to open a conversation on reopening the Troy Library on Fridays, and I appreciate your responses. So when I think of the city of Troy, I think of top-notch schools. I think of a well-educated, financially sound and diverse population. And I think of a lot of really great community resources that we have. And one of the first things that always comes to my mind is our library, which I have used very heavily over the years. I completely understand during the recession and the economic downturn why we had to make some decisions to reduce the library's hours. But I feel like the economy's improved significantly. Our home values are going up. Taxable revenue for the city has also gone up. So I feel pretty strongly that we can look at how do we go about opening the library on Fridays. I also thought, when I think of the city of Troy, what other communities do I feel are pretty similar demographic-wise, financial, school district in size in Oakland County? And I think of Rochester, Rochester Hills, Bloomfield Hills, Bloomfield Township, Birmingham, Farmington and Farmington Hills, and Novi. So I did a little research. Every single one of those libraries is open 7 days a week. And I just feel like for us to be in a city like this, I would really like us to have a full-time library again. So I was just wondering what we could do to reopen that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes those that have signed up to speak this evening. This is an opportunity for City Council or City Administration to reply to comments. Any comments from Council at this point? Councilman Baker.
Just want to say thank you, Christy, for coming and speaking tonight. We did get your email, and obviously we'll be talking more about this a little later in the meeting, I'm assuming, I hope anyway. But thank you for coming. I hope you're sticking around for the conversation.
Any comments from Council, Administration? Thank you. There are no postponed items this evening, so we will move to regular business. I-1 are board and committee appointments. There are no mayoral appointments this evening, so I will defer to Mayor Pro Tem Abraham for City Council appointments.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move the appointments for the Liquor Advisory Committee, Ann Comiskey, for the term expiring January 31st, 2021, and Max Eller, also for the term ending January 31st, 2021. And also to the Traffic Committee, appointing Donald Johnson to the term expiring January 31st, 2021, and Cynthia Wilshire for the term expiring January 31st, 2021.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Abraham and supported by Councilman Pennington that we nominate Ann Kaminsky and Max Erler to the Liquor Advisory Committee for the terms that expire 1/31/2021, and Donald Johnson and Cynthia Wilshire to the Traffic Committee for the terms that expire 1/31/2021. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes. Thank you to those citizens that have volunteered to be on those important committees. I-2 are board and committee nominations. There are no mayoral nominations this evening, and we'll defer to Mayor Pro Tem Abraham for City Council nominations.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move the nominations for the Zoning Board of Appeals for the alternate position to reappoint Orestes Rusty Kaltsunis for the term ending January 31st, 2021, and reappoint J. Travis Mihalik again for the term ending January 31st, 2021.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Abraham and supported by Councilman Baker that we nominate to the Zoning Board of Appeals alternate. If I say this, I know I'm going to get it wrong, Board. Orestes Rusty Kaltsanis and J. Mihalik for the terms that expire 1/31/2021. Discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham?
Yes.
Motion passes. I3 there is no request for closed session this evening, so we will move to I4, which is a revision of council rules of procedure and code of ethics. I will call on City Attorney Lori Grigg-Bloom for the introduction.
Yes.
Good evening.
Thank you, Mayor. And what you have in front of you was provided to all of the council members as a report last time. There were a couple of suggested revisions from council members, and that allowed us to do a deep dive on behalf of city administration and address some of the things that have caused questions or maybe could be clarified. So the majority of the items that you see in red line fashion are from city administration, but there are some revisions that are proposed by city council members. And so you have a couple of different options tonight. You can talk about all of the changes individually. You can just select certain ones. You can just approve it as is, or take whatever action on this that you would like. We're happy to help tonight, or if necessary, to bring this back at the next meeting as well.
Thank you. If council doesn't mind, I'll start this because I think I started this mess. I proposed a change to the rules of procedure for, and I'm having a hard time getting this up. If I could just get some help over here. I proposed a change to the rules so we could address. I'm trying to get I4.
It's the 26-page agenda, not the details.
It's not coming up on anybody's.
It's not?
No.
Okay, I'll wing it.
Makes it difficult.
My understanding for the past 40-some years has been that City Council has been asked not to attend committee and board meetings that didn't specify whether a council person had been assigned to that board or committee. And having talked to the city attorney, I believe that has been part of the training for new city council members, and it's just been kind of the standard operating procedure as long as I've been around city council in the city, and for the reasons that were delineated by the city attorney in her memo. I have noticed in the past months that some city council members were attending committee meetings and board meetings, and I got some calls and some feedback asking why I wasn't also attending. So I thought I would bring this forward so that there would be some clarity, so that residents would understand why some council members were not there. And once again, talking to City Attorney Bloom, we both remember that a prior city attorney for the city of Troy issued a memorandum to the city council to that extent, but we can't find it, and we're not sure if for sure if it was issued, but we do remember it, if that's correct, City Attorney Bloom.
It would have been prior to 1995, yes, but there is something that is out there.
There is something out there. So the reason I brought it up was that I just think there needed to be some clarity there so that we all understood our roles. And if this board or this council decides that they think it's appropriate for council members to attend committee meetings and board meetings outside of the assignment of a council member, that's fine with me. I don't support that, but I just think we need to be cautious that if 4 or more members of the council decides to go to one of these committee meetings or board meetings, there's a potential for a violations of Open Meetings Act if there's some discussion that goes on by those members at the committee meetings. So that's why I brought it up. I just did it for clarity. And if this council decides they don't want to do that, that's your prerogative. So that's why I brought that forward, and that's why that rule is there. So I'm open for discussion on that. If there's support, we'll keep it there. If not, we won't. Councilman Pennington.
Well, I'd like to defer to City Attorney Bloom. She's been here longer than the rest of us. Can you give us a little bit of clarification on why? Because I remember when I first came to City Council, you did speak on that, slightly, and I'm just curious if you could add more.
Thank you, yes. And where you find it in the proposed rule revisions is in 16C4, and actually some of the rationale is put in the proposed change as well. City Council does make appointments to the boards and committees, and then also there are recommendations a lot of times that are made to City Council. So in order to have an impartial board and committee and to not feel undue influence or pressure, in some of those boards, certainly, it would be appropriate to refrain from what appears to be undue pressure. Not that there would be undue pressure, but sometimes the policy of not attending at all is preferable.
Councilman Henderson.
I understand the excitement of a new board when we had the Green Initiative. I know that a lot of people, there were talking points for that board where they were running for election. So I get the excitement and the interest in trying to kick that off. But I also understand what Attorney Bloom just mentioned, the undue pressure. We appoint these folks and expect them to give us reports based on their accumulation of intellect and their conversations that go on. And if they feel overpowered by, 2 or 3 or the dangerous 4 coming to those boards, that could be problematic. I've gone to some of those meetings. I'll high five them, thank them for their service, and then leave before the meeting starts. I don't think there's any problem with that, hopefully. But to sit through the meeting could give the wrong impression or pressure in an unordinary way. That's my opinion.
Councilman Baker.
Is there an argument why this rule shouldn't be put in there? I mean, is there, and I only ask because I'm weighing it out and thinking about it, and like Councilman Henderson said, there was the new Green Space Advisory, and I think that was interesting and exciting for several of us up here and the community, and, it's not on YouTube, it's not streamed, so we would have had to rely on minutes, which are fantastic, coming from the city clerk's office always. But, we don't get a full flavor of what actually happened, and you don't know who was there and what energy was there. So I'm not, other than that recent incident, I'm not sure I'm familiar with other boards and committee meetings that have been attended in that nature that have created any issue. I'm not convinced it should be there. I'm not convinced it shouldn't be there, this new rule. I kind of see both sides of it. I hate to put restrictions, any more restrictions on the citizen side of us that has a general interest and curiosity to go to one of these, but I definitely can see the propensity to have it be, the assumption that, a council member's here that has some weight somehow, and that shouldn't be right either, because the idea of these boards and committees is to be free, independent thinkers without the pressures of us, as scary as we are. So I'm trying to figure it out.
The only comment I have to that is that has been the operating procedure of councils before us.
It just wasn't written.
It just wasn't written. So either we follow it or we don't follow it, I guess, it has been the policy before, it's just not been written. And Councilman Hamilton?
Yeah, my take is, I think you're all making fair points. I'd be okay. I really think you get something more going to the meeting, though, and seeing the dynamics of everything, at least once in a while. I attended a zoning board meeting, and before I got elected, I attended some planning commission meetings, and you really can understand a lot more than even viewing it on video. But I get your point, and I'd like to find a middle ground. Maybe when we do attend, we disclose it and we don't talk to anyone or don't say anything to anyone that could at least make a vow that we won't put any undue pressure on anyone. We'll just attend, observe, and leave, and that's it. That's what I would propose. I agree with Councilmember Baker that I don't like adding more restrictions to our rights as citizens if we're interested in these things. But I get the point that we don't want to pressure these boards. They should be independent. So I would propose we just add to our rules that we just don't have any interaction about city business if we do attend the meetings. That would be my preference.
Any comment? Mayor Pro Tem Abraham.
So Mayor, I do appreciate your providing the historical perspective since you have been on council, certainly longer than I have been. And it's probably been a few months since I've poured through the new council member handbook. I remember referring to it much more in the first 6 to 12 months of my term. And you're right, it's not actually written down there. And perhaps, when we met prior to my taking office, City Attorney Bloom, maybe that was something that was mentioned, but it wasn't highlighted, or perhaps it wasn't noted for in importance relative to other things that were communicated that day. So if we need to put something in writing, I'm not opposed to it. And I think the types of meetings that do typically garner the most interest tend to be Planning Commission, ZBA, and some of our study sessions, although we're there participating, but those are televised. And I know for the green space, I did attend the first one because I was getting a lot of questions of, I want to be on that committee, or how do I get to be part of that subcommittee? I kind of wanted to hear the conversation of what that group decided would be the appropriate way to form that subcommittee. So I was there to just listen so I could answer the questions I was getting over email. And that's not one, as wonderful as the minutes and as timely as the minutes come out from all of our board meetings, it doesn't necessarily give you the flavor of the context. So I agree with Councilman Hamilton that maybe there's some middle ground, that there's some, disclosure that you'll be at this one and that you'll get there at the meeting start, so you're not interacting with people and sitting in the back and leaving as it's ending, and not staying around for, the post-meeting conversation to make sure that there is no undue influence, because I don't think that's ever the intent. And quite frankly, I don't think it's I'd say a widespread problem. It's hard enough just to hit all the council meetings, study sessions, ribbon cuts, and other ceremonies that I know I don't usually have time to physically attend additional meetings. So maybe there's a middle ground we can strike and document.
Well, I'm not sure how you do that. I don't know how you enforce that, and if you have 4 or more that decide to do that, the question is, do you want to continue the policy that's been in place, or do you want to change the policy, is kind of how I look at it. Councilwoman Abraham.
Yeah. And I guess the way I see it is it a policy if it's not written down? And if it's not written down, how would we know?
That's exactly why I'm doing this.
So if we're going to me, without it being written down, right now we don't have a policy. So let's craft what we need to, and we can move forward, whatever it is. And I will be compliant with whatever it is that we vote on.
Councilman Pennington.
My suggestion would be if the meeting is taped, you can watch that meeting anytime you want. Mm-hmm. That way you wouldn't have to sit in that meeting mm-hmm. and possibly have undue, someone in that meeting would possibly feel undue pressure just from you sitting in that meeting. So if it would be on tape, I could see, you wouldn't be able to catch the flavor of the meeting from reading the minutes, but if it's a planning commission or a zoning board or the other ones that are on taped, I would suggest, or I would want it in writing, that the council would be restricted from that meeting. That would be my suggestion.
City Attorney Bloom.
I hate to do this because procedurally I don't know how it would work, but you always have the ability to waive your rules. And so again, procedurally, I don't know how that happens. Certainly it would have to happen before, at a meeting before whatever meeting it was. But perhaps that does provide you with some flexibility. I throw that out there for thought. And again, we'll do whatever council wants to do, but that is, there is, by having it in the rules, they are able to be waived.
There you go.
Is there a consensus to leave it in there as it is, or is there a council member that wishes to change the language or to strike it altogether? Councilman Henderson.
No, I'm waving myself off.
I only brought this up because this has been what we've been doing for 40 years, and all I'm asking you to do is put it in writing. It's very simple. If you don't want to put in writing what we've been doing for 40-some years, then please draft something to change that.
So I support it in writing.
That's 3. Councilman Baker.
I support having it in writing. I'm curious, so I guess that's 4, but you can count, right, Mayor? I've heard you say that before.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, but my concern is still what I said before, and if the rules can be waived, I don't know how that plays out in practice. I guess we know when the board meetings are scheduled in advance, and if I wanted to really go to the next
Green Space Committee.
Well, I'll say green space. I was trying to think of something more obscure, actually. But if I would bring a motion to the council table at the meeting before to waive the rules, to get attendance, or to get approval for me to go. Is that what you're suggesting?
Again, procedurally, it is a little cumbersome, but I think it could work that way. And again, we'll do whatever a majority wants to do, but it does provide some flexibility.
The only other thing, if I could, I'm supportive of this because I do believe it's a cleaner, clearer policy that makes sense. I don't want it to seem punitive in any way because of the green space stuff. I mean, that's not my support. It's not because either of you went. I want you to know that, and I don't think that that's the intent up here by any means. But as long as that's clear.
That's clear. I got 2 or 3 phone calls. I got a couple of emails asking me why I didn't come. It kind of makes the rest of us look a little bad, when to some degree, that you don't, because that's been the policy. But I think we have 4. Can we move forward? I think we should probably handle these individually as we move forward. The city attorney, Bloom, did some redacting and cleaned up some language. Is there anyone that has any problems with those deletions, additions that came from the city attorney and the administration's office? Mayor Pro Tem Abraham.
Not so much an issue with any of the changes, but there seemed to be a lot of differing opinions on public comment, and I was wondering if we might want to have some discussion on that.
Yeah, I don't think that came from City Attorney Bloom or the administration, so I was going to hit that next.
Okay, very good.
Any issues with cleaning up the language from the city attorney and the city administration? Okay. There was some discussion about changing the time, and I think that came from Councilman Baker. I don't know if you want to address that at this point. I know Councilman Hamilton brought something forward also, but I think the one that made the cut was Councilman Baker's.
I hear a lot, especially over this past year, could you increase the time for public comment back to 5 minutes? Could you take it back to 5 minutes? And they hate getting the buzzer at 3 minutes. And I remind people that we generally, I don't think I haven't been up here when we've denied somebody the opportunity to continue when given the opportunity. So it's not that we've shut them down, but Councilman Hamilton had mentioned 5 minutes. It's 3 minutes now. I had suggested, well, maybe increase it to 4 minutes, but if there's more than 10 people that sign up, automatically reduce it to 3 minutes. I was just trying to think of a compromise or something. Maybe that complicates things more than it is. But I hear this both sides, and the other part of that for me was you're smirking, Mayor. That's not on camera. But
you're not the one that has to run the meeting.
Yeah, I understand. But the other concern I had with regard to the public comment was, tonight, Ms. Bowles spoke, and there was only one person that signed up, so it was very easy for me to speak right after she did because we're given that opportunity. But, if 10 people, if she was the first of 10 to speak and she was the only one that spoke about the library and 9 other people were speaking about the Civic Center, let's just say, I would have had to wait potentially for an hour to be able to say what I said to her. And I was wondering if there was a way to craft something that would give anyone on council the opportunity just to acknowledge what they said and give any brief comment prior to moving on if they felt it was necessary. Again, I'm maybe muddying things up by trying to make it too confusing, but to me it seems that there's a real disconnect between some of our public comment and how it's being perceived that we are responding or not responding. I hear a lot that someone comes up and speaks for 3 minutes, speaks their heart out about an issue, and we kind of sit here stone-faced, and then the next person comes up. And then we do that a few times, and then we're given the opportunity. But again, if the passionate, if it's 15 minutes after that really passionate, speech was made, sometimes it's lost on us even to go back and emote that same passion and acknowledge and validate their concerns. And we're obviously up here to hear from everybody who lives in the city, and it's difficult for me to hear people say, well, you guys just sit there and stare at us, and it's tough, and I'd like to try to remedy that somehow. Everyone's laughing again, and no one can see it, but I'm trying to work through that, and if there was a way, and I talked a little bit to the city attorney about this, and she kind of said, I don't know, but and the idea I understand is to not have a back and forth, because that's not what public comment's about. It's not about arguing with us, you arguing with us, or us arguing with you. But I do feel that the community would strongly benefit from allowing us the opportunity to at least acknowledge what you just said and say, okay, the city manager, I'm sure, would love to meet with you after the meeting, or a representative from city management, so the person doesn't finish and stand there feeling very hollow and not heard. So we should be hearing our residents, and they need to feel that we are. So I just said a bunch of stuff without actually proposing anything, but if we could think about that.
Well, I think it is written down what you proposed, but
Is it?
as the person that has to run the meeting, if I could respond, I think that proposal would make it very difficult to run a clean meeting. Waiting every time somebody spoke then I would have to ask council and ask administration if they wanted to respond. And most times I don't think we would respond. In my recollection as to how we've been trying to handle, I've done my best to tell somebody, if you want to hang around for a period of time, we will get back to you. Plus, as City Attorney Bloom said, regarding the last item, we can always ask to waive the rules. And there's a portion in the rules now that's going to make that easier for us, that will be done by consensus as opposed to have to ask for a vote, which I think is a great idea, and that would just take, a matter of 30 seconds for, Councilman Baker, if you would like to respond to a person that just spoke, and you just say, I'd like to waive the rules for an opportunity to respond to, I just think that would be a cleaner way to do it, personally. rather than every time somebody comes up to the podium, I'm going to have to stop and ask, does anybody want to respond, whether it's one person or 10 people. And, you know, Councilman Henderson and I go back to the days when we used to be here till 1 o'clock in the morning, listening to 20 people say the exact same thing over and over again. And if we had to do that every time somebody came up, you know, times are okay right now, but, there's a reason that we changed the rules. We didn't do it arbitrarily and capriciously. We did it for reason, to make, this is a business meeting, and we have to keep that in mind. We try to run it as smoothly as we can, and in my opinion, it's been moving along pretty good with the way that it's been. Councilman Pennington.
Just in that vein, I would not be in favor of expanding the minutes because I think we have done a good job. Well, number one, the public knows they have 3 minutes, and they usually have a concise speech down on what they want to get across, and they do a real good job with that. And when they have to go, when they tend to go over, and we can tell it's going to be, I think we do a pretty good job of letting them finish. So I would not, I wouldn't want to expand it to 4 minutes from everyone, because then, it would be the same thing, but it would just, people would have a 4-minute speech instead of a 3-minute speech.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for Councilman Henderson, but he brought up a good point to me, that actually you can speak 3 times in a council. We expanded those rules to allow people to speak more than just once if they wanted to. And so you can speak for 6 minutes if you want to on an item. And, when we originally did these rules, there was a lot of thinking that went into it, and a lot of what had been happening, and some good thought went into it, and I think it's a good rule. Councilman Henderson.
Yeah, I'll just expand on that point. This is a business meeting. We have to get along with the city's business, and we'd like to get it done as effectively and efficiently as we can. And that's not to say that we don't enjoy the public comment, because a lot of times it gives us a different perspective on things, and we need to hear what the public's saying. But if you can't get your point across in 3 minutes, I'm not sure you can get it across in 5 minutes. So I think 3 minutes, people are accustomed to it, they understand it. If they need an extension of time, we're more than willing to give it to them. If you want to go for the second round, you can certainly sign up to do it the second time around. And you'll notice that we put public comment for people that don't live in the city and don't have any business related to the night's agenda at the very end. That way we can get our business done and move on with things that other people might have interest in. So I like it exactly the way it is, without any changes. And to Councilman Baker's point, if we had to, let's say somebody comes up and gives 3 or 4 minutes, and then we feel compelled to give them a response, your response then leads me to have a thought, and all of a sudden we had 7 people up here, giving response to each one, so that could get problematic as well. Not a horrible idea, I just, it's got some flaws maybe. No offense.
Not taken.
Councilman Hamilton.
I think it's a fair compromise if we can extend the time with consensus. And if someone said, can I have another minute, and we just all nod and then keep going, I think that's a fair way to do it. And that seems to be reasonable. And then as far as responding, you said we could waive the rules if someone wanted an immediate response. So I think that's a decent compromise as well. So I think it's okay. I would suggest that I would like more minutes, but if we can extend time when it seems right pretty quickly, that's fair.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the times that you and Councilman Henderson were referring to, I was usually sitting back there because I was a regular attendee of council meetings between 2010 and 2015. And very often I would be one of 20, 25 people who had signed up to speak. And Mrs. Bowles, it was about the library, by the way. That's what brought me here. So I know a whole lot about that over the years. And what would often happen is more often than not, people would use their 5 minutes, and that's wonderful and that's great. But I would often see people leaving before their time had come because the length of the public comment was going on to 9:30, 10, 10:30, and people had to get their kids to bed or be at work. And so while, I always enjoy hearing from the people, and public comment is actually pretty engaging, 5 minutes seems to be a little bit too long, particularly if there's a lot of people coming to talk about one topic. So when you want to respond to 5 people that might have signed up to for one topic, or 20 people, it gets a little bit difficult. So I think we got a good compromise with the consensus to extend or waive rules. I think we've got something good in place.
Thank you. Sounds like there's consensus to leave it alone at this point. Okay. Councilman Hamilton.
I do have more suggestions I want to make, but I think I'll save them for a future council referral. I had some more ethics and rules issues I want to bring up, but I'll save them for another time.
I think we do have one more. I think Mayor Pro Tem Abraham had, I don't see it on the paper that I have here.
We don't have the memo.
Yeah, it would have been in the Code of Ethics.
Probably City Attorney Bloom.
Mayor, there are actually 2 documents. Actually, the changes that we were made after the last meeting to address Councilwoman Mayor Pro Tem Abraham's concerns are 16. We kind of reordered that and titled it. So that's with the rules of procedure. And Mayor, also just one other item with the with this red line version. On item number 15, it says non-exempted, but then in parentheses, it's non-removed with a question mark. It's my preference to do the non-removed. I think it's clear to do non-removed. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear on the rules of procedure. So there are the 2 documents, and you do have 2 resolutions. So that those are pretty much the changes for the rules of procedure that we've gathered. The next document would be the Code of Ethics, and there are some proposed changes to that as well.
Okay. Are we all good with the rules of procedure, with the changes, and what consent there have been on those changes? Any questions about that? I think council has given consensus to any changes by the city attorney and city administration, keeping the time limits the same and inserting the rules for board and committee meetings as printed, with the addition of Mayor Pro Tem Abraham changing those in where they fall in the rules of procedure.
And Mayor, there is a resolution that is proposed for you that would adopt all of the changes that are in the red line. So that's certainly something that we can do if you wanted to move on it tonight, or if you want us to bring it back in a clean copy, we're happy to do that as well at the next meeting.
I'm more than happy to move that resolution tonight to get it going. Support. Moved by the chair and supported by Councilman Henderson that we approve all changes to the rules of procedure as indicated in the discussion this evening. Is there any further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next, we'll have a discussion on the Troy City Council Code of Ethics, and I will defer to Mayor Pro Tem Abraham for the changes. I believe it is as indicated in the blue. Thank you.
So when we were talking about the boards and committees and the rationale based on the language that was in the proposed rules and procedures, with the concern about the undue influence, and a council member intentionally or unintentionally putting undue influence on the board or committee, it did make me think, undue influence is a two-way street. You can be giving undue influence, or you could be receiving it. And I think you heard me express some of the some concerns about that at our joint study session with Planning Commission just a couple weeks ago, where and we've heard it in the community, some of the mistrust of government, and particularly in the vote that we had last November on the charter amendment and events leading up to it, where there was a lot of scurrilous comments on council members and, are they getting paid to move this Civic Center project forward, or other projects for that matter. We've had a few contentious votes up here. And I want our citizens to rest assured that, no, we are not subject to undue influence. And if we need something in our code of ethics that makes it that much more apparent that we aren't, then maybe that is a mechanism for additional trust between our residents and their elected officials. So that was the rationale. It was not something that's specific to council. I think this council, it's something that I think council 10 years from now, 50 years from now, would have the same concerns. So that's why my proposed language is the way that it is. I want to make sure that everyone understands that we take our roles and responsibilities seriously, we take our code of ethics seriously, and this is what it means to us. So that was really the rationale for it.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from council regarding this? Councilman Pennington?
As I was reading that, I just had more than concern. It just frustration, if nothing else. My family's done business in this city for 50 years, and as it reads, it says, council members will refrain with meeting with potential developers or investors regarding proposed developments prior to Planning Commission granting preliminary site plan approval. Well, I have probably customers of mine, 5 or 6 different developers and builders that are customers of mine, and they ask me questions about the city. So there would be no way that I could adhere to this rule with my dealings with my customers. We do get paid. We do get paid in this job. We get paid $170 a month, and I just want to make sure people know that. Other cities are much more than that. We are pretty much a laughing stock when it comes to council pay, basically. I was told many times not to bring this subject up because if you want to get elected in Troy, you cannot bring up the fact that you'd like to raise the pay of city council, and that was dictated to me by most of city council that is sitting before me. But I just thought that was ridiculous that all these other cities look up to Troy, but we are the low, But anyway, that's besides the point. But my point being is that I would not be able to adhere to this rule. And then I thought of something that Councilman Henderson took upon himself was the Kmart property was an abandoned building. And he talked to a developer, and he was the one that spurred that conversation and got that MJR site. And that would not have happened if he could not talk to a developer before site plan approval. And then it made me think, I was thinking also that everyone wants to talk to the mayor. Everyone that I talk to, they don't want to talk to me, they want to talk to the mayor. And the mayor talks to people, hey, you come to the city of Troy, city of tomorrow today. But, I would not be able to adhere to it, and so I would not want that to be in the new rule of the Code of Ethics.
Councilman Henderson?
Thank you for the shout out on MJR, but absolutely right. I mean, I had the initial conversation, the conversation went like this: hey, why don't you do something here in Troy? And the guy says, well, we don't like doing business in Troy. I said, well, let me introduce you to Brian and staff, and let's start the conversation. And that's exactly what took place. And if you're not proactive, if you're not willing to sit up here as a council and be that conduit, we don't get things done, great things done. And similarly, I'm a realtor in the area. I've sold vacant lots in the city of Troy to developers. And, I'm not about to adhere to a policy that's going to take bread off my table. It's just not going to happen. I'll resign before I would comply to that sort of a statement in this code of ethics. And as far as ethics are concerned, I've recused myself from listings, $1 million listing. I recused myself from a vote so that I excuse myself from getting that $1 million listing on a street paving just last year. So, this does hit you in the wallet sometimes if you do the right thing. And I think it's incumbent on us ethically to do the right thing. And this just seems to be, it's one of those things I just cannot comply with. So,
Councilman Hamilton?
I'd have no problem complying with this. I feel it's part of the job I took is when we have these, if we are to communicate with developers, it should be done in a public forum that people are aware of. So if we are going to unduly influence board and committee meetings by attending them, I feel we might unduly influence developers by meeting with them. It seems to be under the same vein. That's what Mayor Pro Tem Abraham was speaking of. So I support this. I wouldn't have any issue adhering to this.
Councilman Baker?
Good points on all sides. I understand. I think the difficulty for me with this is that it's not a practical statement. There's developers that I've seen at fundraisers, and is that a meeting with a developer? Maybe. So it's difficult for me to say whether or not that would actually be able to do this without making for some uncomfortable situations that don't actually have the intended benefit. And I see where your thought process is on this. And I don't disagree that there has been a lot of concern in this city, especially with the Civic Center development, about, well, what's really going on behind the scenes. I'd be more in favor, if I can, and you've seen how that's gone tonight so far, but to me it's more about disclosure. Councilman Henderson has no problem disclosing that he met with that MJR developer. I've heard it so many times. But disclosure is key. And I think the question becomes for the people of the city is they don't know. And I know the mayor meets with people. They call him because they want to say, hey, we want to do business in Troy. What can we do? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I also don't think there's anything wrong with disclosing that if it was asked, and I don't know if there needs to be a mechanism to do that, but to me it's more about if you're having meetings with developers behind closed doors and then hiding it from the people, that's a concern, and I don't think that is what we should be doing. But if you're out cheerleading for our city and directing them in the right, or pointing them in the right direction to bring a big project here, that is exactly what, I think that's a very good thing. Obviously there's a gray area that's confusing, but we have one of the code of ethics is that recognize that an individual council member has no authority to speak or act for council. I think that the risk in meeting with developers prior to even going to the Planning Commission is to say, oh yeah, I think we can get this approved. And that gives them potentially false hope. We've seen that this past year, I think, with a couple projects, or potentially anyway. So we have a code of ethic that kind of speaks to that. If we can adhere to that, we might be better off with some of these things. But I think if we were going to add something specifically with developers or investors, it should be regarding disclosure, not so much meeting, because it's too difficult to enforce, and I don't think it's, I think it may be too extreme to correct the problem that we've perceived.
Thank you. Obviously, this seems to be pointed to me, so I'll address it. I think it's very far-reaching, and I think it's very impractical, as Councilman Baker said. I think it's to to try and tie it to the Borden committee issue, I think, is apples and oranges. I get called probably every week asking to meet with somebody or have a cup of coffee or whatever to discuss a variety of reasons. Sometimes when I've made it very, very open that I will meet with anyone at any time for anything. And I try to do that the best that I can. Whether it's a developer, whether it's a businessman, whether it's a citizen or whoever. Sometimes I'll go into that meeting not even knowing what the meeting is about other than introducing myself as the mayor and trying to promote a face of the city that is positive. I try to do that every day whenever I'm asked. And many times it may be a developer that wants to have a cup of coffee with me to introduce himself because he's thinking about maybe buying a business or moving a business into Troy, and he wants to talk what he feels is the face of Troy. And many times I get asked, would you introduce me to the planning commission or the planning department or the city manager, which I do. Every single time that somebody calls me or asks me to meet with them that I think this city council needs to know about, I've made sure that I do that. We've had closed sessions on issues. I've always done that. To put this in a code of ethics, I think is too restrictive. It's unenforceable. I wouldn't adhere to it. If somebody wants to talk to me, I'm going to talk to them. And there is nothing unethical about any conversations I've ever had with anybody. And I take issue if somebody thinks that I have, because I've been open every time that I've had a meeting that I think this council should know about or city administration should know about. I've made sure that that was made available. So I think our code of ethics covers this. Without putting this in here, it's too restrictive on other members of this council, that they couldn't even operate their businesses if this was approved. After I knew this was going to be on here, I've had several phone calls from people telling me it's unconstitutional. It's a violation of my freedom of speech to talk to developers and businessmen. So if there is a specific issue, I think it should be brought forward rather than paint with a big broad brush as to there's a problem with developers or investors in the city. If there is, I'd like to know about it. Mayor Pro Tem Abraham.
So just to clarify, this statement wasn't written with any one person in mind. It was intended to be something that could last beyond present time, something that would be relevant 50 years from now. So I just want to make that clear. The other part, which maybe the language wasn't quite as clear as it could be, was that it was regarding proposed development before that Planning Commission granting preliminary site approval. It's not about not talking to a developer. I mean, there are developers that live in Troy. You run into them, whether it's at a fundraiser, whether it's at Farmer Jack, or not Farmer Jack, Kroger's now. You just run into people, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're talking about a specific proposed development. It doesn't mean that you can't introduce them to our planning department if they're looking, for a conduit, a name, a contact. That's not what that was about. That's just providing information on how to work with the planning department, for example, or who to contact within the planning department, or building, or whomever. But when it's about a specific development, we have had those concerns expressed. And I would go so far as to say that they were all unfounded, but the perception is there. So the intent was, and that's all it was, is to make sure that accusations that were thrown at this council in the past year could be offset for future council. That's it. That was the intent of this additional item on the code of conduct, or code of ethics. It was not intended to be pointed out to any single member. Frankly, I'm trying to look out for all of us and for councils going on in future generations. So that was purely my intent.
What's the consensus with council to add it to the code of ethics or to strike it? Strike? Strike.
Add it.
Add.
Strike is written.
Strike it. Consensus is to strike it from the code of ethics?
Mayor, there is one additional change as well, and that is in red, and that is
Yes.
the suggestion of Councilwoman Hoderick, which is to review, study, and refer to the ethics handbook and the ICMA. So,
I know Councilwoman Hoderick isn't here, but I don't want to speak for her, but I support what she wrote there in red. I don't know what the consensus of council is. Consensus to keep that.
so then, Mayor, there is a proposed resolution here, and it would need to be modified to adopt the red line with the last bullet point removed.
So moved.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Councilman Henderson, that we approve the code of ethics with the addition of the red line and removal of the blue line as printed. Further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
No.
Motion passes. Next on the agenda is I-5, 2018 Strategies. City Manager Brian Kishnick.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. As you know, the retreat, going back to our roots, as you discussed, and the Kelly Molinar put on for about 82 of us was, I thought, a great event. It was shortened this year at the request of many. We try to accommodate every schedule of 82 people, which was very simple. And we came up with the 11 strategies from that as a result of combining a lot of the themes and a lot of the strategies throughout the day. So just remember these 11 strategies. I'll get to the 12th in a second. For those, I know everybody can count. The strategies are not listed or prioritized in any order. It is a list of strategies, not number one isn't the most important, although kind of if you look on here, it's very important, but they are all important to all of us. So with that, we sent it out and received lots of feedback from staff and City Council. And Councilmember Hoderick, we provided in the question and answers, talked about a strategy about the police department, public safety and emergency preparedness, and the role of government being safety and security. And given Parkland, our emergency preparedness across the board seems paramount. So the chief and I went to work. Well, actually, Kelly and the chief went to work. And number 12 came about, which is provide high-quality police services that reduce crime, collaborate with the community, and safely respond to critical incidents. So we added that one that was not discussed, or maybe it was discussed. I think it was obviously discussed. What am I saying? But this is one that did not make it on the list, but we added it at the request of Councilmember Hoderick. We also combined some, and then number 3 and 4, Councilmember Hoderick thought that we had buried some of the beautification and placemaking in the strategy. So number 3 becomes beautify with flowers and public art, and And then 4 is examine placemaking opportunities through the development policies. So we try to make those stand out more so that they might be understood and pursued as the year goes on. Remember, this is a list and a document that, if approved by the City Council, we use during the budget process. So knowing these, we've been using it because we're about midstream in the budget process now. We have the first draft, and all this was taken into account in some way, shape, or form. So Mayor, I turn it back to you for a question and conversation.
Thank you. Any questions, comments for City Manager Kishnick from council? I think you did a great job of summarizing concerns. Once again, I know Councilwoman Hoderick isn't here. I don't want to speak for her, but I think she would be satisfied with the additions of the strategies. I think it's a good representation of the meeting that we had. I think it's a great job putting them together. If there are no other comments, I will move the resolution that the Troy City Council hereby adopts the 2018 strategies for the upcoming year as presented by City Management.
Seconded.
Moved by the Chair and supported by Councilman Hamilton that we hereby adopt the 2018 strategies for the upcoming year as presented by City Management. Further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thanks again to staff. Next is the consent agenda. Anyone wish to pull a consent agenda item this evening? Councilman Henderson?
I'd like to move all items on the consent agenda as printed. Support.
Moved by Councilman Henderson, supported by Councilman Pennington, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as presented in the agenda packet. Further discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Motion passes. If you were here on a consent agenda item, they've all been approved this evening. Thank you, Lorraine, for sitting through this evening. Next are memorandums and future council agenda items. There are none submitted this evening. I don't see that anyone has signed up for public comment on items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. So we will move to council referrals. We have 2 this evening, and 1 is a council referral from Council Member Baker, so I would defer to Councilman Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move N1, and I'll read it into the record. Whereas the Troy Public Library is currently only open and operational 6 days a week, Saturday through Thursday, and is closed on Friday. And whereas Troy residents frequently request for the Troy Public Library to once again be open and operational 7 days a week. And whereas public libraries in neighboring communities, including but not limited to Birmingham, Bloomfield Township, Royal Oak, Rochester Hills, Novi, Southfield, and Sterling Heights are open and operational 7 days a week. And whereas the Troy Public Library is a community gathering place and information center for all of Troy's residents, touching every aspect and facet of Troy's diverse population. And whereas the library millage alone may not be sufficient to fully fund the 7-day operation of the Troy Public Library. And whereas the City of Troy has a reputation for being fiscally conservative with taxpayer dollars and has consistently won awards for exceptional budgeting and financial practices, therefore be it resolved that the Troy City Council hereby deems it a priority to open the Troy Public Library 7 days a week and to supplement the library millage with general fund monies if necessary without a tax increase of any kind to the residents of Troy. Be it further resolved that Troy City Council hereby directs the city manager to present viable options to allow for the 7-day operation of the Troy Public Library in accordance with this resolution as part of the budget process for the upcoming budget.
Seconded.
By Councilman Baker and supported by Councilman Hamilton, that we approve N1 as read into the record by Councilman Baker and printed in the agenda packet. Discussion. Councilman Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, it's interesting. I've thought about this for quite a while, and about 4 weeks ago, I started putting this together. And then, ironically, we got an email from Ms. Bowles, and I thought, oh, something's out there in the energy. But I guess I want to start with this. I understand that our city has gone through a great amount of pain and joy and difficulty regarding this library, regarding our library. When the economy crashed, there was a lot that was said throughout our city, a lot of division, a lot of pain, frankly, on all sides of the issue. And I don't take bringing this up tonight lightly. Poor Kathy Russ, the director, sitting in the audience, and she's thinking, oh no, please, please, we're doing well with our library, and I'm sure she's, you know, I think she's excited about anything good for the library. But I know that there's likely concern by some that this is going to bring back some of the ugliness and divisiveness that the city faced 6, 7 years ago, 8 years ago. Well, yeah, 7, 8 years ago at this point. But that's not my intent. You know, I don't believe that funding the library and having it open 7 days a week is a conservative or a liberal issue. It's a community issue. And our community is a community that values the Troy Public Library. The millage was renewed in 2015, I think with 70% of the vote around that, which shows support for the library. I think, you know, the fascinating thing about the Troy Public Library for me is that it does touch, and I touched on this in the referral, it touches every aspect and facet of our diverse community. And when I say diversity, I don't just mean culturally or ethnic. I'm talking about diversity in age. You know, there's preschoolers at the library, there's senior citizens at the library, and there's everybody in between. And if you look at the calendar for events at the library, I looked and I took a picture of it because I was fascinated by it, for March. There's something on every single day in March, programs, except for Fridays, because we're closed on Fridays. And you know, that tells me that people are using our library and they value our library and want the programming that's there. I know from previous experiences that it's difficult to get room at the library. If you recall last summer, we had a Civic Center conversation in what felt like a broom closet because there was no other space at the library to allow all of us. There's definitely a need for more time at the library. You know, we got an email from Jim Warpatinsky, who many of you know, this evening, an hour or so before the meeting. I'm not sure if you've read it, but you know, he wrote, "In recent times, I have noted an increase in resident and business interest and support of the Troy Public Library when conversing with a wide variety of people." And if you know Jim, he does converse with a wide variety of people. "The success of the Troy Public Library Endowment Fund is a testament to the high regard that both residents and businesses hold for the Troy Public Library. In discussions about the Troy Public Library, I find that there is an abundant interest in the Troy Public Library returning to a 7-day schedule." Now, I know there's difficulties in this. I've been asked for a few years now how to do this, and I look at the budget that we have with the millage, and I understand that, you know, it's stretched and maximized, and I think what Kathy Russ does with it is phenomenal in light of the fact that we have many, many part-time employees who are doing a great job keeping our library going. And I can't even imagine how hard it is to shuffle and manage all of those moving parts. But I believe we're at a time in our community where the residents are interested in potentially supplementing the library millage to have the library open on Fridays. We spend a lot of money in this city on things from the general fund that not everybody agrees with. We dealt with a couple of those this past year. And I think that there is community support, broad community support, to investing more in our library by having it open on Fridays, whether that be for a limited time period or for the full day. I understand there's, you know, probably a sliding scale of cost somewhat that would allow that. Councilman Henderson asked a question on this referral to city management prior to this meeting, and the response is provided by Kathy Russ, the library director, and it talks a little bit about the money we've collected from the library millage and the budget we've had, and a loose proposal on, you know, what it would take to open on Fridays. And cutting to the chase, it says, based on these factors, my estimate is that it will cost between $400,000 and $500,000 per year to have Friday service. That's a lot of money. And it certainly is something to take very seriously and to consider on many fronts. I mean, there's a lot of places to spend money in this city with our tax dollars that we collect, and I believe we do a good job of it. We are consistent with our budgeting practices. We win awards for it. Tom Darling's not here tonight. This is his, but he gets very excited when he makes those presentations. But the city manager has done a very good job of engaging the financial ideas team, engaging other groups throughout the community, certainly the budget study sessions with council, to try to find what the priorities are. And I don't think it's wrong of us to explore whether or not there's interest in doing this. Communities around Birmingham, Rochester Hills, Bloomfield Township, Novi, the cities that we compete with on many levels fund a 7-day library at this point, and we do not. And when it's an information center, which is what I believe our library is, it's not just about books, it's way more than that. We need to be competitive in every aspect that we can be, and by having a library open on Fridays again, I think takes a step in the right direction. I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of library budgeting because it's not my specialty, but I know there's a difference between operational costs and capital costs, and I don't know if there's something that could be worked out budgetary-wise with that, but whatever we do, if we can do something, we have to look at sustainability, because we certainly don't want to fund it to open on Fridays for 1 year and then next year decide, we can't really afford it, so let's cut from the library staff again, and then we go back and forth. We can't treat it like a tennis match or a yo-yo. I'm trying to think of the right analogy. But it's something that we need to consider, and I think our community wants it from us, and we'd be wise to strongly consider it and look and see if there is a viable option that allows for some sort of sustainability and gives the community what they want. And I believe that is a 7-day library service, and it's not just one email from Ms. Bowles who was here tonight. I've heard it consistently more than any other issue over the past 2.5 years. People ask always, so when are you going to open on Fridays again? And I can never give them an answer because I don't know, and I try to figure it out. So I bring this tonight. A little bit of the conversation was started by these questions. I'm sure that if given the opportunity, a different proposal or even a cheaper proposal could be worked out, maybe, or something. There could be something. Jim Warpatinsky also says an interesting line at the close of his email that I want to quote, and then I'll stop. But he says, "I'm still in awe of how Mr. Kishnick creatively resolved the DDA problem several years ago. Not that all of his other innovations aren't admirable too. Please give Mr. Kishnick the direction and your support to find options to aid the library. He can do it." So that's a big he can do it for Brian. I think with some creativity, we can do what's right for the community and open the library on Fridays again.
Anyone else? Councilman Henderson.
Sounds like a great question for a survey. I asked for the numbers so that we could kind of get a feel for what the budget is. We see it every year, but it's good to see it in print. And the library budget's a little over $3 million a year. A few years ago, we made the decision to take money out of the general fund to do some capital improvements on the library because nobody likes water in the basement and windows leaking and that kind of thing. So we've already taken funds out of the general fund to augment a dedicated millage that the people approved to run the library. So that said, I don't think anybody up here is going to say, yeah, it wouldn't be great to have 7 days a library open, but by the same token, how much money, and looking at the same numbers that Councilman Baker was looking at, she said 400 to 500,000, but the very last sentence, the current year's operating budget is $3.8 million, divided by 6 is $643,000. So it's upwards of $500,000 if you just extrapolate the numbers through a 6-day work week right now. So the yo-yo effect, I think, is probably the best way to term that, as Councilman Baker indicated. So the economy is going great today. Next year, maybe it takes a dive. We have a standard that we have to meet based on our agreements on city council. We use the general fund to do roads and fire stations and those kind of things. And if we start to nick away at that by having an extra day or another $650,000 a year potentially, then at one point we may find ourselves outside of the standard in our general fund. And so what do we do at that point? Do we now take the additional person that it might take to run based on Kathy Russ's information here? She may need an extra person just to a full-time person to handle all the employees that are currently there. So, do we then yo-yo that situation and, okay, well, we got to lay them off this year, maybe hire them next year when things turn out. So we can never count on the economy to really be our friend in that regard. So I'm not necessarily in support of taking general fund money to slide over to run a library outside of what the experts tell us they can run on a $3.1 million dedicated millage.
Thank you. I got something to say. I was here in 2010. And I don't know if Christy Bowles was here in 2010 when we tried to pass a dedicated millage to allow the library to be open 7 days a week and be dedicated to a board. That I always thought that's the way you should do it. That's how most communities do it. They have a dedicated millage for the library and let it operate on its own, have its own board, and it would have been a great thing for the city of Troy in 2010. I supported that. I was behind that. The Friends of the Public Library were behind it. Most on city council was behind it, but unfortunately there were 4 fake proposals that were put on the ballot that confused the residents, who ultimately got confused and they all got defeated. If that wouldn't have happened, we would have a 7-day library today. We would have a board and it would be operating very well. And if somebody wants to initiate that again, I am with you 100%. Let's try it again. But to me, that's the way it should be done. It shouldn't be done by supplementing a millage that the people of the city of Troy approved. To me, you're going against their wishes if you supplement it at this point. They chose 2 times to renew a .7 millage for a 6-day library operation. To me, it would be irresponsible for us to do that against the wishes of the people of the city. I think if we did what we did in 2010, times have changed, it would pass. It would pass with flying colors. Councilman Baker, I'm in full support of that if that's what you want to propose. And the one thing you failed to read out of Jim Werpetinsky's email today was that he supported a millage increase. I don't know if you did that on purpose, but he did say that. And I am more than happy if the people of the city of Troy want a 7-day library, let's ask them and let them fund it. But to take it from our general fund at the risk of creating an imbalance in our budget, putting our fund balance in jeopardy below 15% or 20%, to me, I think is irresponsible. It's not what we should do. I think you're taking from Peter to pay Paul, and with this resolution, you don't know where you're taking that money from. What consequences are there going to be for taking $500,000 to $1 million to supplement the library for 1 more day? So I'm going to take a look at the resolution bit by bit. The Public Library is currently open and operational 6 days a week. We know that. It's closed on Friday. Troy residents frequently request for the Troy Public Library to once again be open and operational 7 days a week. I wouldn't disagree with that. I would love to see I tried to get it open for seven days a week. I take issue with the next paragraph. Public libraries in neighboring communities included but not limited to Birmingham, Bloomfield Township, Royal Oak, Rochester Hills, Novi, Southfield, Sterling Heights are open and operational 7 days a week. I was doing some research on this today, so I went back and took a look at what cities do have 6-day-a-week libraries, there are many libraries that are listed here that are not open 7 days a week. Some of them are open 7 days a week in the summer, 6 days in the winter, and vice versa. This is not an accurate statement, I don't believe. The Troy Public Library is a community gathering place and information center for all Troy residents. Couldn't agree more. It's an asset to this city. The library alone may not be sufficient to fully fund a 7-day operation. Well, we know that's absolutely true. When I suggested the .7 mils back in 2011, we did it with the intent, we just got defeated in 2010 for 1 mil. We did a survey. There was a consensus in the community that they may support a .7 or a .5. So we asked the library, asked Ms. Russ, what's the minimum that you need? And we got a number from city administration, and I proposed .7, and that's what we proposed, and that's what we got. And the reason we did that, and I know Kathy Russ can explain this to many people, is some libraries are open on Sunday, some libraries are not open on Sunday. Most of the libraries around here are not open on Sunday, so we chose to be open on Sunday so that if we have reciprocation with other libraries, so the people can go to those other libraries on Friday that are open, and then those people that have reciprocations with the City of Troy can come here on Sunday because their libraries aren't open. So that was the thinking that went into that. This wasn't done in a vacuum, and it wasn't done with good thought. The City of Troy has a reputation of being fiscally conservative. Absolutely. Absolutely. I take issue with the last paragraph, that the Troy City Council hereby deems it a priority to open the Troy Public Library 7 days a week and to supplement the library millage with general fund monies. To me, we shouldn't be, this is not the way you do business with budget items. We should bring this up during budget discussions, during our discussions in study sessions. I would be more than happy to talk about this, but to force city administration to take money from our general fund, to me, is irresponsible without knowing what the consequences are going to be a year from now, 6 months from now. We're talking about trying to add police officers to get more police officers. Is that the trade-off that we're going to have here? I don't think the people of the city of Troy would be appreciative of that, in my opinion. To me, I agree with most of what is said here, but I think this is a discussion that should take place at study sessions for our budget process. That's the way it's always done. I don't like that we're using council referrals now to tell the city administration how to do the budget process. We've had a budget process in place for quite a few years, and it's been very, very good at what it does. This is what we should be talking about at the study sessions. If we feel it's important, that's where we decide, do we have the money? Don't we have the money? What are we going to sacrifice if we do this? That's where this discussion should take place. And that's why I can't support this tonight, because this isn't the way you should do it without knowing everything. You should know everything. What are the consequences? But I'll tell you, I support having a 7-day-a-week library. somebody wants to come to me and say, let's go back and do what we tried to do in 2010, I am with you, because I think that's the way it should be done. And I think the citizens of Troy should make that decision, not by supplementing with our general fund. Mayor Pro Tem Abraham.
Thank you. Mrs. Bowles, I'll speak to you since I know you came especially for this topic, and I want to respond to your comments. As I mentioned earlier, this is what got me engaged with city life. It was the library. It started in 2009 when the economy started to go through a downturn. There was a millage at that point. It was 1 point some mills, and it would have fed into the quality of life services, and that got voted down. And then, as the mayor mentioned, the 2010 Prop 1. In fact, I can see one of my fellow Prop 1 team members, Mr. Green over there, sitting there, where we spent an entire summer and fall trying to get it to pass, and it didn't, for many outrageous reasons. Then I spent the next summer making sure that .7 mil worked and passed. And it was the compromise, as the mayor said, and certainly not what I wanted, but certainly I could live with it. To put it in perspective, prior to the economic downturn, the library's budget was anywhere between about $4 to, I think, almost up to $6 million. And so clearly, having a budget of $3 million, you can't do everything that you once did. Also, to put it in perspective, when you're talking about the library staff right now, there's about, I think it's 5 to 8 full-time staff. I'm getting that right? Oh, up to 10. 10 full-time staff. It is by far mainly part-time employees. And it's been manageable. Adding an extra day, certainly you'd have to add staff, and it couldn't really be part-time staff, it would need to be full-time staff. That aside, minimum wage has also been going up, so you can see that the people costs are eating into that $3 million. We've also had a lot of capital outlay projects, and this isn't, we put in, new carpeting that was already, 20 years old in the youth services. I think that was last December, right? It was right after the Winter Festival. These are pretty significant. We've had building issues. And it gets to the point where you can't actually function as a library, which to me is providing information, whether it's ebook subscriptions, digital media, books. We have the children's area has some wonderful games, and then for those that have learning issues, they've got a special collection there. We begin to become not the library that we really want. Right now, even though we've got a 6-day library, it's a really good 6-day library. My concern is by spreading it out to 7 days, it wouldn't be possible with the $3 million. And as a council member, I got to look at the needs of the entire city. So I love the library. I've been coming to this library for 40 years. I remember coming to it when I was 2-3 years old. But I have to be mindful of other things that the community wants, which is getting our police force closer to where we were several years ago before the downturn. Trails and pathways, again, maybe not everyone uses that, but maybe not everyone uses the library. But I need to understand what the budget trade-offs are with police, with trails and pathways, with roads or infrastructure. I have a very difficult time committing as much as I would like to commit without understanding what I'm trading off of. I think the budgetary process, certainly if we're going to have that discussion during the budgetary process, I think we would have anyway, but certainly if we're going to have a lot more rigor, I would imagine. But I can't commit to the resolution. I mean, it's well written, but I just can't commit to it right now because I don't know what the trade-offs are. And I need to keep the entire community's needs in mind, and I think we'll have better line of sight next month, when we do have the budget study sessions. I hope you come to those study sessions. They're extremely enlightening, and I say that having attended, sitting in the peanut gallery, not sitting at the council table many years ago, because it is something that we do look at and we ask the questions every year. And every year, I hope our property values have gone up enough where the millage will go up more than maybe $100,000 from the previous year, if at all. So at this point, I can't support it. I do thank you for being the Jiminy Cricket, I suppose, making sure that we're being mindful of it, but right now it's just a difficult thing for me to support.
Councilman Hamilton.
Yeah, the way I see this resolution is just presenting viable options to do this. It's not necessarily binding us to anything. I think this is saying we want this. What do we need to do to make it happen? This is going to give us the answers we need, what would be sacrificed if we were to do this. And all we're directing the city manager to do is provide those options. So I support this just for that. This isn't binding. This is just saying this is a priority to us. Can we make it happen? So I support it, just to answer that question.
Just a comment. I believe it says, resolve that Troy City Council hereby deems it a priority to open the Troy Public Library 7 days a week and to supplement the library millage with general fund monies, if necessary. I think it is a directive. Councilman Pennington, do you have a comment? Councilman Baker.
If I could. I think you're both right on that language. The intent for me was not to say by this resolution the library needs to be open on Friday starting July 1st, or that was not my statement with this, but the main point was that we need to have these conversations and be presented with viable options, and if those viable options included using money from the general fund, we should be presented with those. So my language, if it can be amended and that would help, I'm happy to do that right here. But I just want to say a couple things. I don't think this is an irresponsible approach to this. I think that the budget process is already, I think, about halfway done, the city manager said. If I didn't bring this up now, and I waited until it was presented to us in big, beautiful binders, yes, we can make changes at that point. But I thought it best to give a heads up to the city and city management that this was something that this council may consider a priority and be something which we should look at. So I think this is the right time to do that. But I understand that not everybody feels that way. To the mayor's points about that this would be a disservice to the millage and to those who voted in favor of funding this with the millage. I would happily state that, I think that the quote was forcing city administration to take funds. That again, these funds are already our taxpaying dollars. I mean, with the money that is collected in the general fund is money that the residents are paying. So if you're providing city services with those general fund dollars, I don't think the community is upset or feeling like they're being slapped by using their tax dollars to fund a library that they want to have open. So I guess I have a different opinion on that a little bit. I understand the idea of, you'd like to encapsulate it all in a new potential proposal like you'd supported in the past. I was not on council in 2010. I was a resident, and I was somebody who used the library and went through all of that from the resident's perspective. I was not an advocate like Mayor Pro Tem Abraham, but I did see what it did to the city, and I understand all of that. Mr. Warpatinsky did say something about he would be supportive of increasing the millage in 3 years. I don't necessarily see it that way, and that's why I didn't read that section. To sit here and say we need to increase the millage is to sit up here and say we need to raise taxes. And I don't think that's the right approach when we've got a general fund and a fund balance that have been healthy and we've been doing well. So that's why I chose not to read that section. But, he also says as part of that, perhaps this general fund could help out the library until that point, and then we'd have that discussion at that point. I get where he was going with that. As to Councilman Henderson's statements that, if you divide the budget now by 6, and you end up with almost $650,000 per day, yes, you do. And the mayor said, up to $1 million. I mean, we heard it all, and those are very scary numbers. I mean, the library director gave a very quick estimate of, 400,000 to 500,000. So, I think her point about, and I shouldn't speak for Kathy, but her point about dividing it by 6 days that was one option, one way of looking at it. But it was, I interpreted that as, it was to say that's not as much as we're spending per day now. She could open it on Fridays with less than we're spending per day on the other days. Maybe I'm wrong on that. It's up for debate, I guess. But, if I could amend this and take out saying, any kind of deeming it a priority, I would happily do that if I thought that we could at least have a further conversation about it in the budget sessions. I do think it is something the community wants, and but, if that's not if the council's not willing to take that step and be bold in that respect, I understand that as well.
Councilman Pennington.
Well, I think everyone wants a 7-day library, but we have a reciprocating agreement. I mean, it makes sense the way there was a lot of time and energy that was spent years ago when they crafted those proposals. Not that many years ago, the city was in dire financial straits. $1 million every other year is a lot of money. But it could definitely be put to a question on that survey. If the people want 7-day library, then maybe we should propose it on that.
I think that's a good point by Councilman Henderson, that that's a question that maybe we should include in the survey if we get to that point, but I think that's a good suggestion if we get to that point. I guess we'll wait and get the report from administration on that. Anyone else wish to speak? The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham?
No.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
No.
Councilmember Pennington?
No.
Mayor Slater?
No. Motion fails. We will talk about this at the budget hearing. I'm positive we will. And to Councilman Baker's point, it has brought it forward to the point where we will talk about it, I'm sure. And I think that's what you intended. Next on the agenda is N2, which is a council referral from Councilmember Hamilton. Councilmember Hamilton.
I'd like to move N2, resolve that Troy City Council hereby waives the rules of procedure for the City Council, Rule 6A, regular meeting agenda, to add an agenda item after the Wednesday noon deadline.
Support.
By Councilman Hamilton, supported by Councilman Baker, that we waive the rules of procedure for the City Council, Rule number 6A, regular meeting agenda, to allow a council member to add an agenda item after the Wednesday noon deadline. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham?
Yes.
Motion passes. Councilman Hamilton.
So, Lori, I would like to, as mentioned earlier, I'd like to make the language not binding. So would you interpret it now, right now, as not binding? I'd rather just be like, we deem this a priority, but not be bound to it. Is there a way we can modify it? Or as written, would you call it non-binding? Just to deem it as a priority, but not that we would have to follow it.
City Attorney Bloom.
Mayor, if the problem is the words deeming it a priority, you certainly could soften that language a little bit, and therefore be it resolved that the Troy City Council hereby wants to explore having a dedicated traffic safety unit within the Troy Police Department. And then the second paragraph, I believe, could remain as is.
Okay. Then I'll read it like that. Okay. I'd like to move N2, whereas due to past budget constraints, the City of Troy eliminated the Troy Police Department's Specialized Traffic Safety Unit. Whereas upon information and belief, a dedicated traffic safety unit within the Troy Police Department could contribute to the overall health, safety, and welfare of the city and its residents and those persons using roads and highways in the city of Troy. And whereas City Council is desirous of exploring the cost and benefits of having a dedicated traffic safety unit within the Troy Police Department in preparation for the city's fiscal year budget discussions. Therefore, be it resolved that Troy City Council hereby wants to explore having a dedicated traffic safety unit within the Troy Police Department. Be it further resolved that Troy City Council hereby directs the city manager to present viable options, if available, to facilitate a traffic safety unit as part of the budget process for the upcoming budget.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Hamilton, supported by Councilman Baker, that we approve the resolution as read and amended. Do we have to vote on the amendment, or is it okay just to proceed with the way it was written?
It's fine the way it was read into the record.
Okay, thank you. Discussion? Councilman Hamilton.
As an automotive engineer, I've often been involved with active safety technology. I know how important it is to keep our roads safe. And during the campaign, I would walk down long neighborhood streets with no sidewalks, and cars would speed by in 25-mile-per-hour zones well past 45 miles per hour just to cut through. I've had residents call me and talk to me at the doors about the dangers of high speeds and distracted driving on our roads, and they want us to do more. We are one of the safest cities around, but I'm still hearing from a lot of residents that there's a lot of issues. We've had pedestrians killed, and I remember one resident brought it up in 2015, and I've heard from Troy Police, when I was at the Citizens Police Academy in particular, that they would like to be able to reestablish their traffic unit. And with more police on the streets enforcing traffic, we can help protect our kids from one of the most dangerous experiences they will face. It's actually the #1 cause of death for teenagers is traffic accidents. So I'd like to work with TPD and city management to discuss how we can provide the resources to make this happen. I ask council to approve this resolution just to make it a priority for this year's budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion by council? Councilman Henderson?
First, I want to apologize to Chief because this afternoon at the agenda meeting, I indicated that I didn't think the question that I asked was answered, but further reading it, it was answered. And my question was simply, is there an increase or decrease in traffic incidents that would necessitate going this route? Facts and figures. We need numbers. We have to know kind of where we're at. And the response was simply, the city manager and the police chief have had ongoing conversations during the budget process regarding staffing in the police department. We anticipated the possibility of additional personnel based upon budget decisions, and this is where I didn't read, we'll be prepared with supportive data as required at that time. Any data at this point would not be complete nor presentable in the professional format that the council has come to expect from staff. So I appreciate the answer, and I just didn't read it fully, but I'm not prepared to vote yes or no on this until we get some substantive data about whether there, yeah, you can say, yeah, that guy's speeding down the road, or, we're too close on a sidewalk and he went by too fast, but is there a reason? Have we had more accidents, more incidents, those kind of things? I would like to see some of that data before I'm prepared to spend a lot of money to try to add another division basically into the police department.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. There's something to be said about having the presence of Troy police cars on the road, whether they're enforcing traffic or, I don't want to say merely, but having a presence is certainly a deterrent to crime. People don't want to commit a crime in Troy when you know that the fuzz are patrolling the streets. So in addition to just traffic safety, I do think that there is merit to it. But again, I struggle with indicating this is a priority when I don't know what my other budget needs are that will be sussed out during the budget study sessions. And I was referring back to our newly approved 2018 strategies. And, in my interpretation, item number 12 is provide high-quality police services that reduce crime, collaborate with the community, and safely respond to critical incidents. I see that unit as being potentially a very core way of enabling that strategy. So in my mind, during the budget study sessions, that would certainly take a priority because I just said it was with the strategies I voted on. But I do need to understand, if there are budget implications because, funds are limited. We do want to be wise with taxpayer dollars. And, at this point I can say, yeah, I would want that. Heaven forbid something like what happened in Florida on the 14th of February, you want police and law enforcement to get there as quickly as possible, and that is what this unit could do. But again, I need to understand what it is I'm looking at. So I'm not sure I can support the proposal as amended, but at the same time, I think I kind of did with my vote on the strategy.
Councilman Pennington.
Well, I want to commend our police department like I have a few times in the past, but we are either the safest city in Troy, or the safest city in Michigan, or the second safest city in Michigan every single year. And it's because of the staff that Chief has and the police officers that patrol our streets. I hate to put the chief on and I should have asked this earlier, but I hate to put the chief on the spot, but I'm going to. I'm just curious, what is the elimination of the specialized traffic unit and how was it replaced? Just curious what that was.
City Manager Kishnick.
We certainly can have the police chief come up here if you want it. Just my personal opinion is this is what we're going to talk about in the budget process. We've been talking about this for 6 weeks now.
We can do it then.
Yeah, internally, and this is something we really want to do. But I mean, we're going to have all that.
I'm good with it.
And so that they can prepare, Councilmember Pennington.
Thank you.
Yep.
City Manager Kishnick, it is your discretion as to who comes up and speaks in front of council. Councilman Baker?
We changed the language to wants to explore. With that language, I don't see it a problem as something I can support. If we're worried about deeming things a priority as being too, although I'm sorry, you deem something a priority doesn't mean you have to do it. It just means it's a priority, like our strategies, but that's a separate issue. It wants to explore. I'm comfortable with that language, and I think that we're already doing that, so I see no problem in supporting this resolution if it's something we are actually going to explore. And I think it sends a good message that we care about it and we're looking for safety in our neighborhoods and on our streets. And although does this mean there'll be more speeding tickets being issued? Because that could be a concern. But I would support
revenue.
Well, once again, I have different issues. I don't feel that this is the process that we should be using for our budget process. We shouldn't be using council referrals. We have a process in place. I agree 100% with what Mayor Pro Tem Abraham said. Until we get into the budget discussions and discuss alternatives and where the money is available and what it's going to be used for, that's when we need to have these discussions, not through council referrals. So I can't support basically a council referral that dictates what we're going to do in the budget process because we have that already in place. We don't need to do this. When I was in the retreat and I sat with a group, one of the members of my group brought up that we should reinstitute the traffic unit as a strategy. And we had a discussion about it, and I'll give you what I told them is that that's not the role of the city council, to tell the police department how to run its operation. We shouldn't tell them they need a traffic unit. We shouldn't tell them they need a SWAT unit. We shouldn't be dictating and micromanaging how the police department operates. The way this works is that the police department knows what's best for their department. They know how to manage their personnel. If the police department, if chief mayor and the city manager get together and decide they want to ask for 2 or 3 officers to get that traffic unit back in place that they had to cut because of what we were going through in 2010, that's the way it should work. City council shouldn't tell the police department how to run the police department. We shouldn't tell the DPW how to run plowing roads. We shouldn't tell the fire department how to respond to fires and how much personnel we should use. To me, we're looking at this in reverse. We have a process in place. As Mayor Pro Tem Abraham indicated, it is a strategy. It will be discussed in the process, and that's the way that it should be. We shouldn't be micromanaging the police department, telling the police department what to do and how to man the city. I'm sure Chief Mayor is addressing the traffic issues through his personnel today. He may not have a dedicated unit, but he may decide to try to propose that at the next budget, but that's the way it should work. I can't and will not vote for resolutions as council referrals dictating how our budget process should work. We have a process in place that's worked very well for many, many years, and I think we should just adhere to that process. And we will accomplish this through that process that we've already established. So, any other comment on the resolution? Councilman Hamilton?
I'll just say, again, this is just showing the opinion of council that this is important. Let's see what we can do. I don't think this is dictating anything to anyone. It's just saying, let's explore it. Let's make sure we make time in our budget negotiation to see if this is doable. That's all I'm asking for here. I'm not saying we want to do this, and it could even be the police department could say we don't need this, and that's fine. But from my take of what residents' needs are, and from what I've heard, this is a priority to me, but I will respect whatever the budget process brings out. So this is just listing priorities, similar to the strategies. So that's all I'm trying to do here. I'm not trying to dictate how to do things. Thank you. That's all.
The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
No.
Councilmember Pennington?
No.
Mayor Slater?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Abraham?
No.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes.
Motion fails. Once again, thank you for bringing it forward. Next on the agenda are council comments.
I only have 45 minutes. I'm kidding.
Put the 3-minute timer.
Put the buzzer on.
We're going to start timing you.
Needed 4 minutes.
Councilman Baker?
I will be brief. We just were talking about the budget process, and I think that, we need to have the opportunity from this table to bring forward ideas from the community and go into the budget. And I think it's fairer to city management to give them more of an advance warning than to come at the budget study sessions and say, here, oh, by the way, the community was talking about this. So I agree with what you said, Mayor, on, we don't want to micromanage. We don't want to, dictate's tough. I don't think any of us are dictators, but we are a policy-setting body, and if we think the policy should be to increase safety or open a library, I think that can come from us and should come from us rather than from the top down. I understand with police matters, it's a very different thing, and I respect the chief and city management on how they work that out. But, we talk about policies that are written or not. If there's a specific budget policy procedure or guidelines, maybe we need to refresh those and look at those again, because not all of us necessarily think it's a good idea to go to city management or to go to the city manager and say, hey, let's make this a priority. We need to have that conversation in open meetings among all of us, and we all have a voice, an individual voice, and if it gives us the opportunity to talk about it at the table with time before April next month's budget study sessions, I don't think it's a bad thing to allow Kathy Russ, for example, to have a month to prepare and get things really ready with city management, same with the police department. Absent doing something like we did tonight, I feared the budget study session, someone could have said, well, that came out of left field, why are you just coming to me with this now? So if there's a process in place that has strict rules, I'm happy to review it and look at it and say, okay, maybe I was out of line here, but I don't think voicing the concerns of the community and the people and trying to do something about it is micromanaging.
Any other council comments? Next are reports. Any council comments on the reports? Councilman Hamilton.
One of the reports in P2A is on coyotes in Troy. And I know a few years ago, before I was on council, there was a presentation about the coyote problem in our city. I had residents coming to me telling me stories of how their little dogs were killed by coyotes in our city. And I've seen some roaming through my neighborhood over by Beach Road. So I just wanted to share that information with the public on what our options are. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to control coyotes. I recommend you read this report, and we're trying to get the same person in to give the presentation again in a future council meeting. So residents that have talked to me about this issue, we're thinking about it, and we'll let you know what you need to do. But just always be careful. It's just you can move coyotes out of the city, and they end up coming back. It's a very difficult problem to solve. So we care about it, and please read the report, and we'll get back to you on what your options are available. That's all.
I think sometimes we forget when new council members come on that we dealt with that 6 months before, and not everybody understands, but I know the police department and the city administration did a great presentation on that. It's on the website, and the bottom line is keep your pets close.
Yeah. Yep. I like how the DNR puts the cute little puppies right on the front of their...
Mayor, if I could.
City Manager
Just
Kishner.
one question for the city council based on that and your commentary. Would you like this presentation annually then?
That's probably a good idea.
So do a coyote presentation annually in front of the council.
I think I like that.
Okay.
And how about hawks too, I think they
Maybe not annually, but maybe semi-annually.
Yeah, biannually.
It's been a couple years. Biannually, thank you, biannually.
I mean twice a year?
No, biannually.
Every other year.
I heard 70.
every other.
It's been a couple years, so maybe every couple years.
Okay, Councilman Hamilton.
Yeah, I would just say the residents that talked to me weren't aware of it. So if we can just help bring that awareness out.
The video is very exciting.
It was.
True, it was a good video.
Yes. A little disturbing.
Any other comments on the reports on the agenda? I don't see that anyone has signed up for comments on items on or not on the agenda from members of the public outside of Troy. There is no closed session this evening. Thank you for coming. We are adjourned.
Yeah, let's do